We think Superflex is the future of fantasy football. And in this video, we're going to explain why. I'm here with my co-host, Matt Giraldi.
What's going on, guys?
And let's dive in. The first point we want to make is that we want to make every quarterback matter, right? In your drafts and on Sundays. It's a whole different element to the game that just completely gets left out if you don't add that second quarterback spot. So like in one quarterback leagues, right? Caleb, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, these guys aren't even weekly starters. Even Justin Herbert maybe aren't even weekly starters.
Yeah.
And so, you want to try to bring these players into the player pool that matter. And it just adds so much more to your draft and to trades and everything. And it's so important that I borderline don't even play in leagues that aren't in Superflex anymore because I think it adds such an awesome element to the game.
Yeah. And it's, those guys that you mentioned are kind of on the borderline, but even players like Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, JJ McCarthy going into his first year, Bryce Young, who finished strong, Michael Penix, who, we have a lot of hope for, Anthony Richardson, Sam Darnold, who's coming off a great year, Cam Ward, who was the number one overall pick. It just makes, the element of playing fantasy football that much more fun, bringing those guys into the fold, as well as just watching games on Sundays. Like, I can't tell you how many Titans games I was locked into last year because I had to start Will Levis in a spot to start, which, side note, don't go zero QB. I tried that last year, but it's just, overall, it just brings to the forefront the most position in the game, and one could argue the most important position in all of sports.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just so much more fun to be grinding a super flex spot with somebody that you're maybe weighted and you're just like, or you're on bye and it's like, oh my God, I need this player to do well. I can't believe I'm in a situation where I'm going to be starting this guy, And it also brings, trades, which we'll get into later. It's just like, you're scouting these guys, you're watching these guys and actually have a fantasy football stake in them, which I think is just the more players that you can root for, the better for the game that we all love to play. So the second point here, right? Better drafts, right? More chaos, way less chalk, right? It turns into much more what do your league mates like to do versus what is the consensus ADP, because building your rosters when you need a second quarterback, you just don't know exactly when everybody's going to go in on their first or even their second quarterback. So, it turns into very league specific drafts and helps, generate buzz for the best part of these leagues that we do, right? Which is the draft. More preparation results in a better draft generally, but also very much so in these Superflex leagues where you can kind of look at your league history. I know part of transitioning over is being afraid that somebody that's played in the format before is going to have some sort of advantage. I promise you that's not the case. Whoever has played in the league before generally has league history and is able to kind of plan how they want to do it. If you're transitioning and nobody's ever done it before in that group of people, it is so difficult to predict what's going to happen in the draft. And people that even prepare don't know. So take that as your cue to just make the transition now. It is so worth it. You'll get more and more league history, but that first year is so chaotic in terms of who's going to pick what when, and it makes it completely and totally a different draft experience.
Yeah. And, even in our home league, we've been playing Superflex for 10 years and it's still unpredictable. Like last year, I got Henry and Achane in the 4th and 5th round. And it's not like, these guys were sleepers in any way. Like sometimes these guys just get pushed way down. And like Kyron, on the other hand, was a 2nd round pick. Jonathan Taylor was pick 10 in our league as well. And all of these guys were kind of in a similar tier. So it's just, it's very chaotic. And, not just at the running back and wide receiver position, but the quarterback position as well. Like you got Goff in the 7th round and Trevor Lawrence was picked 11 and Goff was coming off a better year. We had him ranked higher. And I'm not trying to cherry pick these type of players because they were, some out of nowhere guys that rose that we see every year. Like these were kind of in similar tiers. So it's just, even when you've played for a long time, there's just that element of chaos that makes it so much fun.
Yeah. And people will make interesting decisions when you add a quarterback in too. And it's not only are those players getting selected that make other players fall, but also it changes how your outlook on how you want to build your team, right? If you are just able to punt the quarterback position until round 14, then there's not really a big incentive, right? And you can get like a wide receiver if you play in a 2 wide receiver league, right? You get 1 wide receiver and then you're just hammering running backs. and then these guys don't fall. But when you have 3 wide receivers and a super flex, it's like, I can kind of just punt running back, right? It makes zero RB much more feasible strategy. So like kind of picking a lane during the draft is an interesting thing that you can do in these drafts too, that you can practice beforehand, figure out what you want to do, and then try and strike at the values as they come to you, like you did with Achane and with Henry, right? I mean, we talked all offseason about getting your wide receiver solidified, and then you end up with 2 running backs in your first 5 picks. Not something you ever thought was going to happen. But when everybody else is kind of trying to build their team similarly, you get these values that fall in Superflex leagues. Going on to our third point here is the stability versus upside. And this is like such a fun topic to discuss with the quarterback pool because in Superflex, you definitely want to be looking at the quarterback floors as you go down the rankings, right? Like you get into quarterback 12, 13, 14, 15, the floor of those players in one quarterback leagues is irrelevant. So you see these high upside guys like Richardson or Fields get pushed all the way into like the top 10 or 11 of rankings because those are the last guys that are going to get picked as starters in one quarterback leagues. Now in super flex leagues, that absolutely calls into a lot more question, like what am I going to do at this range? And you hear a lot of don't draft Jared Goff, right? Well, it's like, okay, yeah, I get that from a one quarterback perspective. He doesn't have a ton of upside and he doesn't have a ton of weekly upside either. But in Superflex, he's super valuable if you can count on him to score 15 plus every week and be consistent. And so that's why, it's an interesting thing. And I had Goff ranked all the way up at like quarterback 11, I think, or 12 last year. And it was because of that stability element. It was because of the Superflex element. And I think you lose that when you're only ranking for one quarterback leagues and you're only playing in one quarterback leagues.
Another example is if you're building out your QB room and you take Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson and Michael Penix, like you don't want to do that in Superflex. That's totally fine to take shots on riskier players in one QB because you can cut them, you can grab Tua from the wire, you can grab Stafford from the wire. In the same accord, if you decide to wait a little bit and your second QB is someone like a Stafford, you want to attack that stability. So you want to kind of mix and match, which makes it a lot more strategic.
Yeah, and my favorite stability QB3 is now retired, so it's just unfortunate. I'm going to have to move on to a new player now. No more Derek
Carr, man.
As Derek my Carr. QB3 or QB4 because people just leave him for dead and he's just top 20 every year. But yeah, it's I'm going to have to figure out a new stability quarterback. Maybe Stafford will take that role for a couple of years here now.
Or Geno.
Yeah, Geno's another good one, or Darnold even. Darnold, I feel like, is getting pushed down again to an unfair place. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the back end of quarterback shakes out. We'll do rankings here shortly, and we'll take a look at those guys all a little bit more deeply and talk a lot about this because as you get down the ranks, this is so important for your quarterback room, right? That you get an upside and a stability guy as your 2 and your 3. I think, anyways. So we'll talk about that strategy in the rankings video. Moving down to the fourth option here now, and this is something that you and I think are very into in terms of trades, right? And so the ability to open up additional players obviously opens up additional opportunity for trades and for waivers. And so it's so important that in Superflex that you understand how to trade with people in your league, right? So if you are able to get a fourth quarterback that's really good, or you have a good third quarterback and you're looking to maybe downgrade that and to try and upgrade a different spot. Those type of things happen all the time in Superflex leagues. And it's very, very interesting and very fun, I think, to be able to attack from that angle. Because otherwise quarterbacks are kind of irrelevant in the trade market. It's like, you're trying to trade Josh Allen to move up to, HN, and everybody's like, no, I don't need a quarterback. I have, Bo Nix, who I got in round 14. And it's just like, oh, dude, this is lame. So, it's so from that aspect, quarterbacks are significantly more valuable on the trade market. And then also from the waiver perspective, right? We have all these fab suggestions and all these waiver guys that always come out. And in Superflex leagues, your fab is so precious because when a quarterback comes available that's not expected, you have to have money to be able to spend on him. And so, that's where a lot of the fab money comes from, in my opinion, is on those quarterbacks that hit the wire. Like we had last year, we had Drake May on the wire. We had Caleb Williams get cut early in the season. We had Anthony Richardson get cut when he got benched. So there's just quarterback values that always come available on the waiver wire, whether it's, like that in your league or not. In 10-team leagues especially, it's like that. And you have to make sure that you're saving that waiver money and being ready to strike at the quarterback position on waivers.
Yeah, and we're going to do a dedicated video to this fab strategy in Superflex, but another couple of guys like Jameis Winston hit the wire and had value. Russ, who I think you mentioned, even Mac Jones hit the wire and had value. So, yeah. And so it makes the utmost importance in, having that money to spend.
And so that's our case for why you should switch to Superflex. Now is the perfect time to bring it up with your leagues if you're watching this. And just try to make a push for it as we get closer and closer to the season. And so hopefully you guys switch over. Hopefully you guys stick with us throughout the season, and we look forward to talking to you in the next one.